The Chinggis Khan National Museum of Mongolia is hosting the Chinggis Khan, How the Mongols Changed the World special exhibition from July 2nd to August 25th, 2024, displaying invaluable historical artifacts and items used by the great Khans of the Mongols. The special exhibition unfolds a set of exhibits, some of which were presented at the exhibition in Nantes of France, including the porcelain crafts, crystal mirrors, crystal goblets used during the Yuan Empire, and golden girdles worn by the emperors of the Hunno Empire. The exhibition in Nantes took place between October 13, 2023 and May 5, 2024 at the Nantes History Museum of France and attracted over 250,000 visitors. One of the notable items at both the Nantes and Ulaanbaatar exhibition is a letter written in Mongol script by Ilhāan Өлзийтөөс to King Philippe the Fair of France in 1305. The special exhibition at the Chinggis Khan National Museum of Mongolia is inspired by Dr. Faverou's research and co-curated by her, Dr. Chelon, and others. Marie Faverou is an associate professor of history at Paris Nanterre University. She has been a member of the French Institute of Oriental Archaeology in Cairo, a visiting scholar at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, and a research associate at Oxford University for the major project Nomadic Empires. Her last book, The Horde: How the Mongols Changed the World, published by Harvard University Press in 2021, is an international bestseller. In her book, Marie Faverou shows that the accomplishments of the Mongols extended far beyond war. For 300 years, the Horde was no less a force in global development than Rome had been. It left behind a profound legacy in Europe, Russia, Central Asia, and the Middle East, palpable to this day. Faverou takes us inside one of the most powerful sources of cross-border integration in world history. The Horde was the central node in the Eurasian commercial boom in the 13th and 14th centuries and was a conduit for exchanges across thousands of miles. Its unique political regime, a complex power-sharing arrangement among the Khans and the nobility, rewarded skillful administrators and diplomats and fostered an economic order that was mobile, organized, and innovative. From its capital in Sarai, in the lower Volga River, the Horde provided a governance model for Russia, influenced social practice and state structures across Islamic cultures, disseminated sophisticated theories about the natural world, and introduced novel ideas of religious tolerance. The Horde: How the Mongols Changed the World is an eloquent, ambitious, and definitive portrayal of an empire little understood and too readily dismissed. Challenging conceptions of nomads as peripheral to history, Faverou makes clear that we live in a world inherited from the Mongol moment. The team of Untold Chapters of Mongolia is very happy today to be hosting you for our podcast. Dr. Otkam Bayar and I are following the traces of our great Khan to establish the truths and myths about Mongol history, especially when it comes to the history of the Mongol Empire. Dr. Faverou, we would like to congratulate you on being the concept co-author of this very amazing exhibition, which was displayed in France, Nantes, last year for 7 months. Would you please introduce us the concepts of this exhibition and also of the parts that are today being displayed in Mongolia?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, Masha Vaishla for your invitation. I'm so happy to be here. So indeed, we had this wonderful exhibition in France called How the Mongols Changed the World. And of course, Genghis Khan, two key aspects we developed in France for this completely new exhibits that never existed before in Europe. So our concept was based on new research done by Mongol archaeologists, historians, also an international team of also anthropologists and historians. We all work together to make people understand that the period of Mongol Empire is not only a period of conquest and war, it's also very much a period of exchange. And this period started in 13th century up to 14th century. But it was a whole period of transformation at every level of societies. So technologies changed, art changed, vision of the world changed, new objects appeared, a new language also took shape. So that's what we wanted to show in this exhibition in Nantes. And I have to say that it was a very big success, that people were amazed, discovering, of course, the history of Genghis Khan. They have heard of him, but they didn't know exactly about his biography, so we could show it through objects. And also, of course, how big the empire was, that it's not only about what is Mongolia today, but of course a huge, territory that was covering at that time Iran, Russia, China, part of Europe. So it was a big political construction. And people in France were absolutely amazed and discovered that amazing period of history.
Wonderful. And again, we'd like to thank you very much for delivering Mongolian history on behalf maybe of the Mongolian people to that part of the world. Thank you very much. And of this exhibition today, we're now in the main hall of the Genghis Khan Museum. What are the specific exhibits that you would like to highlight that pertain to the history of the Mongol Empire?
So the idea was, of course, we had this big exhibit in France, so 300 objects coming from Mongolia, from here, from this wonderful Genghis Khan Museum, but also objects coming from French collections, Louvre, Sèvres, National Archives. We have Mongol objects in France. So our idea was to bring some of these objects here to Mongolia, to be shown to Mongolian people for the first time. So we had to make a selection, of course, and we decided to go for the most important object, historically important, the object that really represents this moment of, we call it Pax Mongolica, Mongol peace. We call it sometimes a Mongol exchange. It's a great moment of globalization. And also, of course, we were very keen to show how French and Mongolian diplomatic relationship developed in this 13th, 14th century. This is really like something that happened at that time. So we wanted to show that as well to Mongolian people. So those objects are shown for the first time here because most of them are coming from Ilkhanids, the Ilkhanid part of the Mongol Empire, which is like Persian, Iranian, Azerbaijan parts of the Mongol Empire. That's why they are not kept in Mongolia, but they were kept in those regions and then sold to France. And that's why they are now in Louvre and Sèvres and all those important museums. That was our idea. And I think it's something very emotional also for both, us like French, but also Mongolian people, that to see those objects coming here, for the first time.
Yeah, and of course I do understand that it's very emotional for you because you have authored one of the most important literary, I would now even say, monuments to Genghis Khan's history, the Horde, how the Mongols changed the world, right? So I fully share the emotions behind your co-authorship of this exhibit. Now, as a testament to what you've just said of those exhibits that are being displayed for the first time, not only in France, but also in Mongolia, maybe we should now introduce Mongol Han's letter to Philip the Bell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Otkombayer, at the time this letter was written, what Mongolia looked like? What was happening in Mongolia?
Well, it was the time of the farthest extent of the Mongol Empire. But Mongol Empire as a single unity ceased to exist. 1260, after the feud between Kublai and Arikbur for the throne of the great Khan, the empire was divided into 4 different parts. And in this letter, Ilham Өлзийтөөс, he refers to that fact. And then, after the death of Kublai Khan, when Өлзийтөөс Khan has ascended to the throne of the Yuan dynasty, there was a restoration of formal unity of the empire. So in the letter, he refers to the name of Timur, Tokhta from Golden Horde, etc. So he basically writes to the king of France that the unity among the Mongol states has been restored. Even he is referring that the roads have been restored, hinting that now the trade flow is going to be free. In that way, this letter is very important. Of course, we do have earlier letters in Louvre and Vatican as well, but this letter is referring to this particular period of Mongolian history.
After the demise of Kublai Khan, the Mongol unity of the Mongol Empire is being restored. He's practically announcing this.
Forming
yeah.
French king, whom Mongols considered to be the most powerful sovereign in Europe. So he is indicating that we have restored unity, now free trade is free, and maybe he is indirectly indicating that now it's time to take on Muslims.
Because I was tempted to ask, was this a reflection of the third neighbor policy of Mongols of that period? But since they are now thinking of devising of different, campaigns against Muslims, I will abstain from asking this question. Now, what France looked like?
Yeah, well, at the time of Өлзийтхан, France is a very powerful kingdom. Actually, if you look at Western Christendom, France is one of the wealthiest and the most populated ones. We think there were like 20 million people in France at that time. So it's a kingdom. There's a king. This king is called Philippe the Fair, and he is a very powerful king. He is also a senior king. If you compare with Өлзiyt, who just arrived on the throne and just say that in the letter, I just reached the position of Khan chief. Well, then you can see that Philippe the Fair instead is an old ruler in a way. It's been 20 years he's on the throne. So it's political position is a bit different. At the same time, of course, Mongol Empire is much bigger than France. Mongol Empire is the biggest empire, the biggest power in 14th century, clearly. So it's interesting to see how they talk to each other in the letter, how Өлзiyt addressed the French king, saying, like, you also an ally since your father and grandfather were allied to us. And I think that's beautiful in the letter to see how there's this memory of the alliance between Kingdom and France and Mongol Empire. As you said, it's an old alliance. We have older letters, and we know that there were already contacts before. So, but now, of course, Philippe the Fair is a leader. Is stronger than the Pope, probably at that time, and he can decide maybe on the Crusades that go back to this context of fights from the West, where people wanted to get back what they call the Holy Land, which is basically Jerusalem, and there's a fight between Muslim in Near East at that time and the Western kingdoms. But also it goes beyond that. In the letter, it's very much about peace also. Өлзiyt say, we made peace in the Mongol Empire. We, descendants of Genghis Khan, he clearly said we make peace. And we connected our roads. He said the word Zamud is in the letter. So, and he said, I heard that you are also Frank. So we don't say French at that time, we say Frankish. Frankish. So it's not only the French, but actually also Western Christians, in fact. We heard you also at peace among each other, or trying to make peace among each other. So let's go on this road, because it's good for business, right? And it's also good to be allied, so as we did in the past. So I think it's beautiful to see this young ruler, Өлziyt, writing to this senior French ruler, Philippe the Fair, and saying, well, let's go on the path of peace, because there's nothing more beautiful than that. And then, of course, there's the enemy, the common enemy, which is not mentioned in the letter. So, but we think it's not specifically the Muslim, because some Muslims were allied to them, but it's more the Mamluk Sultanate. They had some fight with the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt and Syria at that time, fights that went back, from Ulegu's time, so it's an old fight. And they want to ally also because they want to be sure that they would control the area that we call today Middle East or Near East. So that's the idea.
The father of Өлziyt Khan, Arghun Khan, also wrote a letter to Philip the Bell, also asking for this alliance. So was ever this alliance put into reality?
I know. This is a very important question, actually. So this alliance failed and is a big success at the same time. So it's very interesting. So militarily speaking, there were never two armies, like a Frankish or French armies going with Mongol armies against the Mamluk, for instance. This never happened. In a way, it's a good thing, I think. But anyway, but what happened is people start to exchange. So we have here these beautiful, magnificent letters, but behind this, there are ambassadors, there are translators, there are merchants. Italian merchants participate in this embassy and others. Artists, craftsmen also exchange their knowledge and transfer their technologies from Mongol Empire to France, from France to Mongol Empire. This is something that was not specifically thought about at the beginning of the alliance, but it happened. Like people start to talk.
What we call now people to people ties.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So this is not controlled by the power. This is something that happened. And also something super interesting is, okay, in France at that time, nobody knew about Mongol faces. People didn't know anything about, Mongol Asian people. They come with this letter and also previous letters. They come in the embassy. They come and they carry gifts. They brought beautiful textiles, silk textiles, imperial textiles that were really manufactured in the Mongol Empire. It's not Chinese, right? It's really Mongol. So they come and they show their tradition. They speak their language. They also show their beautiful faces. And suddenly you see in Western paintings, for instance, Mongol faces. And people talking about, there are other traditions. This is other culture. It's very fascinating. We've never heard of it. And they say, it's not Muslim. It's not what we know because crusade context. They know about Middle East, but they knew nothing about beyond. And suddenly they hear about what's happening beyond, and they are extremely impressed. Imagine you have this letter. So in France at that time, paper is very rare. It's a very wealthy thing. Nobody would be able to produce such beautiful documents, 3 meters long, Korean papers, beautiful bichik, Mongol script, beautiful red seals. They were amazed at the Philippe the Fair. They think they are the most powerful court in Europe. They cannot produce such documents. And they see that so that's why they preserved it, actually. That's why it was kept. We have very few documents kept from that period.
This intact.
Exactly. And so well kept, in a very special room, most precious. I was seen as the most precious document ever. So it gives you an idea of also how the Frankish people perceived the Mongol at that time. And that's also something that is in a way included in this piece of art, in this letter.
To your question, you see, it's the time when Mongols first came to Europe, 1241, 1242. The general understanding was that the leader of Europe is a Roman Pope, because it was Roman Pope who started sending emissaries to Mongol court. So Mongols were under understanding that Roman Pope is the most important person in Europe. And then later on, they realized that Roman Pope is not the most powerful person. There is a Frankish king, Philippe le Bel, who keeps Pope under him in city of Avignon. It's called Avignon period of papacy. He was not in Rome, under the control of the French king. So then they decided, okay, he is the most powerful king in Europe, and started corresponding with him. Of course, there were numerous attempts to coordinate military action against the Mamluks, which did not end in successful cooperation. King Louis IX was the first who tried to coordinate the action against the Mamluks, but unfortunately, because of the military planning, King Louis de France, Louis IX, when he landed in a fight in a crusade against the Mamluks, he landed in Tripoli, in the other end of Egypt, whereas Mongols were in Syria. So obviously, that crusade was not very successful.
It was not.
So it did not bear any result. Maybe closest was the attempt of the English king Edward the Longshanks. The viewers would know him from the movie Braveheart.
Yeah.
But Edward in Braveheart is a very old man.
Yeah.
But when he entered into the crusade, he was still prince. And he really landed in Levant or Lebanon. And Mongol General Samagar moved to support him. But again, King Edward did not succeed in his initial skirmishes with the Mamluks. And then before arrival of Samagar, he concluded peace treaty with Mamluks and left back to England. So, and that left already a room open for Ilkhans and Franks somehow to cooperate.
To reconnect.
Reconnect to fight with the Mamluks. And, well, this is the ending period of these attempts because Mongols, in the end, in 1322, they signed the Treaty of Aleppo with the Mamluk Sultanate, never to invade each other. And by then, Ilkhans became Muslims already, etc. So it's 1305, ending period of these attempts.
So clearly, yes, militarily speaking, it's a failure, but in terms of business and exchange, it's a success.
Very surprised to learn that these high-end hats of European women.
The Bokta, look like the Bokta, right?
Yeah, looked like the Bokta.
think so.
I read in the Peter Frankopan book that it was actually, the idea was taken from Mongols, and also this
The fashion.
English order of blue color. Again, it was taken from Mongols. That was interesting. So that shows how the cultural influence came into this.
Yeah, this is testament to all kinds of exchanges. This is testament to diplomacy, cultural heritage. I mean, the literacy of the Easterners, namely the Mongols. Yeah, their writing script. I mean, this was a huge, of course.
If you see the Red Seal, the Chinese letter on the Red Seal says the precious stamp of the great Han invested by the sky, ever blue sky, to rule over 10,000 foreign peoples. Well, 10,000 is not figure. I mean, it's the Mongolian word of tumeng. Too many.
Many, many.
So the fact
Thousands of
that
thousands.
stamp was written in Chinese, that shows that Ilkhans, they considered themselves to be subordinate to the great Han in Yuan dynasty, and these stamps were provided by the great Han of Yuan dynasty to the Ilkhans.
The great Han in Yuan dynasty at that time was who?
Tumur.
After Kublai Han.
After Kublai Han. But unfortunately, unity ended there. Only the formal submission.
That's why Өлзийтөөс didn't want to take the title of Khan, which is not in the letter, because he respected his senior,
He
ruler.
writes of himself as Sultan. Yeah?
Yes, exactly. And he also writes to the King of France as Sultan, which is very interesting. But the titles at that time didn't mean something Muslim. It means powerful ruler.
And it is interesting, the Mongolian names for the King of France. He writes Iridevaras.
Yes. Roi de France.
So it's
King of France.
Or Mediterranean Sea is in Mongol eyes or spleen shape. That's why they refer to Mediterranean Sea as Delusi.
That's why. Mary, would you agree that this is a evidence of Pax Mongolica?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. So the object itself, it's Korean paper, it's Mongol batik, it's a Chinese seal, it's the content is about how to connect roads, it's also about how to connect diplomatically. Imagine Mongol Empire is so far away from Kingdom of France. At that time, it's not like today. Communicating is really something you need to want very harshly to make it happen. It happens to this letter. It's the people also who carried the letter. So we had 2 Mongol ambassadors. One of them actually was an Italian ambassador, also carrying the letter to the King of France for the Mongol ruler. Behind this letter, we have Italian translation made at that time, by a translator to make the King of France understand what's happening, what's in the content of the letter. And also this beautiful letter is about peace. It's about how to, what is the best and the most difficult things to do when you're a political leader. It's not war, although we can have allies and enemies. It's how to make peace with your family, descendant of Genghis Khan, but also in the case of the Frankish king with Christian rulers as well. So this is really something that represents, in my eyes, what we call Pax Mongolica. And also I always say Pax Mongolica, it's not only the Mongol Empire. Of course, Mongol Empire's leader is behind the Pax Mongolica, but it reached beyond. It goes beyond the frontier of the Mongol Empire. It reached the Kingdom of France, and it reached England, it reached Germany, it reached also Southern Asia, other part of Japan. It's a world phenomenon. That's also what we can see in this document.
Wonderful. Now let's go and see another evidence of Pax Mongolica, yeah? Now we see Giriga. Can we say that the use of Girigas established diplomatic immunity?
Yes, in a way, it's true. It's like a passport. Because if you receive this, it has been granted by the хан, what it means, and also you can show it to official places, and people would open up doors for you, give you new horses, fresh water, food, help you on your way, give you translators as well if you need. So for an ambassador, it's something you really need if you want to cross a big Mongol Empire at that time. You need the gerge because it shows you really an official. Because imagine at that time, there's no digital passport, whatever. So there's no photos, pictures of faces of people. So how do you prove your identity? So you have to prove it, and this is a way to prove it. This is a way to say, well, I'm an official, I'm working for the Mongol Empire, or I'm in touch with the Mongol Khan. So, pay respect. And it works very well. And they were super famous. Although in other countries they used some sort of passport, these were more important in a way because it covers such a huge territory. Imagine it means if you have this passport, you can go from China to Hungary, you can go to Persia, you can go to Anatolia, Turkey, you can go to Russia, you can go everywhere under the name of the great Khan. So there is no thing we can compare with.
Visa free, it's like diplomatic passport.
Exactly, it's diplomatic passport. It gives you even more than that because they exchange. They give you new cars, if you need. So it's like the idea. So, but I think it's super interesting for the French. When they saw that, they were fascinated because we don't have the exact same things at the time of Philippe the Bel, for instance. And it's part of the new administrative tools that inspired the French and the Westerners. How to help people to travel, like officials, not only ambassadors, merchants as well. They have to prove their identity. How do you do that? This is a great way to do it. So, and here you see it's very important the script. In one case it's bichik, Mongol-bichik, but in the other case it's paxpa, like square scripts. And these are very official state imperial Mongol scripts. Nobody can really reproduce easily those scripts. It's a way to prove that these are legal and legitimate passports. That's also very important. So the whole, fashion of the object is very important. So, and in France, I was so happy to show that to my students, for instance. They think, Mongols are nomad, they don't use script, they don't know anything about script. Come on, look at that. Look at the letter and look at the paxpa script. It's such a complicated and beautiful script. We don't even have that in France at that time. And this is really how you change the way we envision history of the Middle Ages thanks to those objects. That's why they are very important.
Very important. Yes. But there were other types of giriga, yeah?
There were different types of giriga.
And even wooden girigas?
Yes. For example, for traders, they would not issue golden giriga. So it was wooden giriga. The importance of these giriga is that, for example, from Beijing to Black Sea port, before Mongols, you have to travel through different states and pay many taxes. Whereas Now, if you have a gerge, you pay one tax and get your gerge, and then travel from Beijing right up to the Black Sea port. That's the unification of the taxation system. On the other hand, and secondly, read the book of Guillaume de Rubruck, who had to travel to Mongolia, to Karakorum, for months. And then on the way back, he was given gerge, he was using this system of relay postal service, and he reached the Black Sea port in 3 weeks' time. In 13th century, it was speed of teleportation. So that was, how do you say, accelerator of the trade. Yeah. In case if earlier, besides the paying taxes, your good from Beijing to Black Sea port would travel a year, maybe. But now in 3 weeks' time you can reach. That's also.
Wow, that's very interesting. Also, it's a symbol of connectivity.
Absolutely. So it's really a symbol of Pax Mongolica. But it's more than that. It's like really an efficient tool that is really, it shows us how it worked. Because people sometimes say, oh, that's this idea of Pax Mongolica. But you see, it's more than idea. There are institutions behind. There are really like tools behind. So they implemented this. And they also, so from the time of Genghis Khan up to the late Mongol Empire, they really tried different type of gerge. Sometimes they asked people to bring back the gerge. They had sometimes problem because there was no name on gerge. So actually, when you're in service, you use it, but then you're supposed to send it back to the central government, right? But sometimes you want to keep it in your family because it's very useful to have it. I think I heard that actually Marco Polo had one. I mean, described so this famous Venetian merchant who worked for 20 years in the Mongol Empire. He had one, and he described the gerge system in his book. But we know that in his when he died, he left a few objects to his family, and one of them was a gerge. Yeah.
But one thing we should learn from these times, because when they have golden gerge, they were given some benefits, like actual real benefits, horses, lodging, drinks, food. This time, green passports and the blue passport holders are given nothing. Thank you. Now let's go to our great city of хэрхэн. Great. Now we're at the city of хэрхэн. Please take us on a tour around the city.
So this is the city probably in the late stage, probably end of 13th century. So the city was founded by Agdanbуугийн Khan, as you know, but the site was already chosen by Genghis Khan, as we know. And this city is very interesting because it combines modern infrastructures, let's say. So we have big streets. Like you can see clearly, also this was made on after archaeological excavations. We have really clear information on the streets. There were 2 big streets at least crossing,
like avenues,
exactly.
Prospects.
You could go on with your horses and carts and describe. Sometimes when there's a lot of snow, there's a lot of traffic. So there's big avenues. You would have all those houses. In these houses, you have many kind of different communities living. So we know there were Christian people. We know there was at least one big church in the city, but there was a mosque, probably at least 2 mosques, but maybe more, and also temples. The most important temple was the Buddhist temple that you see here, very high temple, and it was probably the most important religious point of the city, but still. There were these other communities there, and craftsmen as well. So Muslim craftsmen were important. Here you see them represented, outside the wall of the city, but we think they were also Muslim in the city. And the wall all around is not a defensive wall. It's a wall that just shows that it's a kind of sacred space where you could have also high-ranking officials, Mongol officials living in, having their own palace areas. The Khans would come and visit the city, although it's not living within the wall, even if it's outside.
So that's the Khan's palace, eh?
That could be the Khan's palace. So we are making it hypothesis, to try to understand. But that could be because we know that Khan's palace was probably under Erdenzu today, so there will be some excavation, but of course we preserve the area. We cannot dig, there. So, but there were also other palaces outside Khartoum. But Khartoum is also very much made for merchants, foreigners, missionaries. This Guillaume de Rebrouck, for instance, important missionaries, Franciscan monk coming to the city, needs, he doesn't know how to live in a guerre, right? He needs to live a city life. So that's why the city was made for. And also the city is made for the craftsmen who built the palace, the temples, using bricks they made with the ground. So it's really mud brick, made with the water, Mongol water, Mongol, earth. So it's a city made by art, but craftsmen who come from other countries, but in a Mongol way. So it's a real combination of talents and skills. That was its unique at that time. It's also unique, of course, because there are people coming from everywhere. It's an international city. You have several languages spoken. We know there's this guy coming from France, Guillaume Boucher, coming from Paris, who built up a famous silver fountain for Monk Han. So, but there are also Hungarian people, there are also Russian people living in this city. You have also many Muslims from Central Asia, as we said, and they all live together. This is unique for Middle Age. Yeah. There are no other example. It's something super special.
Even these days, there is no such an example where, multilingual city, all enjoying peace and, safety.
Incomprehensible for the 13th and 14th century. Because in the 14th century, if you see the history of the world, you will see in Europe witch hunting. You cannot imagine, a Muslim mosque in European city. Whereas in Arnhem, you have a Muslim mosque, you have a Christian church, Buddhist monastery, etc. So that's, in that sense, it was a very cosmopolitan city. On the other hand, it's very interesting when Mongols are considered to be nomads who doesn't know anything about the city. At that time, there was a specific designs that Mongols used to follow. For example, if you see the lake over there, Mongols always design a lake inside the city. And when city of Beijing was designed, actually today's Beijing is Mongol designed city. Of course, designer was an Arab engineer, but infrastructure was designed by Chinese, If you see the lake of Beidahai, this is a Mongol designed lake. Of course, in the 13th century, it was a much bigger lake connected to the Grand Canal, so that ocean ships could come to Beijing. So it's very interesting.
So the level of engineering knowledge was amazing at that time, because I would assume that these are artificial lakes.
Sure.
Yeah, and then to make an artificial lake, you have to have water engineers at least, yeah?
Yeah, actually, this is really also typical of Pax Mongolica. Like, you use the skills and the force that are in the empire. So the Mongols used Central Asian engineers, or Central Asian Chinese also, to just work in the city, but according to their own taste as well. So it's a combination of things. You cannot just see one type of house or one type of temple. It's a mixture, and it's unique also in that sense. And that's also the force of the Mongol. It's like you adapt the environment to these new cities they created, and also you kind of entice people to work together. And we say that there were all those religious communities living next to one another, but we have to say that it's not that easy. We know that in the sources. Sometimes people fight, there are competition, it's difficult. So it means the power really wants people to live peacefully to each other, and it's a real policy behind it. So if you put very different people next to each other, it's always difficult. So that's also something that you have to see the Mongol will behind it. Otherwise, this would never happen. Nobody, even if you dream that, it never happened. You really need to have very strong political commitments behind it, and also economies were flourishing. So this city was built also with the first conquest. So Mongol Empire is at that time rising, flourishing. That's one of the ways they use the wealth they made during conquest time, and it's a very interesting because it's a peaceful way to deal with, what you earn during wartime and to move to something else, which is not war, which is like, okay, let's try to live together.
And it's interesting from the book of Guillaume de Rubruck as well as Plano Carpini, we know that in Harvard, the emperors used to organize a competition between the priests from different religions. And when you read these accounts, it looks very funny. Mongols regarded it as another festival. Invite two priests from two different religions for a contest, and after they do this competition, and when Mongols regard, okay, in this competition, I think there's Taoist monk as well, and offer him a bowl of iron, as if wrestling match. But it's interesting. They would invite different religions to contest. I assume it's very difficult to prove who is right and who is wrong in religious competition, but it was done. Actually.
The high level of court entertainment. It's like you have this debate in front of the ХААН, but also his wife, and all the Mongol elite, and they want to hear about what Buddhists have to say about that, and how a Christian answer that, and what Muslims have to say. And this is really well done, also in a peaceful way. They try to they sort of there's a way to organize this. It's like Olympics of the time, but it's a unique place in all Middle Age where this could happen, and this we know through all the sources.
At that period, this contest usually decided by force everywhere around the world.
Yes. But not even in those years. Look at our times. We're talking about clashes of civilizations based on religious discrepancies. There is no religious tolerance among us, even in the 21st century. So, these days, not only these days, people throughout times were thinking of Mongols as of savages who knew nothing of civilized world, who knew nothing of city building, of religious tolerance, of peacemaking, of diplomacy. I think I would conclude for myself that the best time to live would be хэрхэн and the 13th century. Of course, we cannot measure the developments then by the criteria of today. When we talk about peace, when we talk about war, criteria are different. These were cruel times. But in those cruel times, this was the most civilized world, unsurpassed to date.
They put a lot of effort. It's like, they really tried to make people talk to one another and to create things. So that's also what you can see for this period, and that's very special. So, and also, I think what is special, and if you compare with France at the same time, because imagine France, we talk about Philippe the Fair. In France at that time, there's no religious tolerance at all. The Jewish people were fired, and it was a very harsh time for, there's no religious understanding at all. So, and here where it's different because also they accept differences. So they say, okay, you can be different. You can be Muslim, it's very different from Buddhist. You can be Christian, and even like Orthodox Christians, very different from Catholic, for instance. And it's fine. There are also Jewish people. Everybody's different, and they have a right to be different and live next to each other. That's also very special, because in Middle Age, usually, the idea is like, we have to be one. Like, we have to be all the same. Speak same language, have the same clothes, have same religions. Here, it's not the idea. So the Mongol Khan say, it's okay, I tolerate differences, and that's completely unique.
Then what did the Mongols advocate? Did they advocate world unity, world peace, globalization? Because, people again think that Mongols were the greatest conquerors. They wanted to own the entire world. Is this true? Can we claim so?
I would say that, of course, these words were non-existent at the time. What Mongols were looking actually for was economic prosperity, trade, from which they would benefit, And for them, it didn't differ whether the trader was Christian or Muslim or Chinese or Jew, as long as they pay taxes and do good trade. And for example, in 1270, when Teutonic Knights tried to advance the city of Novgorod, and Novgorod has sent a letter to the governor of the Golden Heart in the city of Vladimir, asking for help. He sent emissaries to the Teuton Knights, and this letter says, your petty conflict hinders the trade of the great Khan. Immediately stop this. And really, Teutons left back. They were afraid that if they will attack Novgorod, Mongols will come after them. But this shows that the major importance was a trade. We probably could conquer Siberia fully.
Yeah.
But we never did this because trade was not in Siberia. Trade was along the Silk Route. So if you see the roots of Mongol invasion, okay, you may see from political history that Mongols were chasing, I don't know, Jalaluddin, Sultan, etc. But on the other hand, if you see from Central Asia, Mongol invasion goes into three directions. One to Europe, along the Caucasian direction of the Silk Route. One to Iran or Persia at that time, going straight to the Baghdad and Damascus further, and one to India. So it's not simply lust of war. I believe that it was also they were seeking economic advantage in their own way. But it did help at that time, because when you earn money, you don't want a war, right?
Of course,
because if in the time of war, there will be no trade.
Yeah, and taking this opportunity, Mary, I would really like to thank you for the book, The Horde, How the Mongols Changed the World. What would you now, in conclusion, say about the Mongol Empire of the 13th, 14th century? What the modern world should learn or appreciate in Mongol Empire?
Well, I think I speak as a teacher and historian. Of course, I think that we really now understand how big this period of history was. We talk about trade, we talk about religion, we talk about new cities. It's an amazing period, and it was completely obscured by previous historians in the past, and things are changing in the West. In France, it was clear with our exhibits. In Nantes, people told me this is the first time I hear about the Mongol Empire. It's clearly the biggest in the Middle Ages, and probably one which changed the most things ever at that time. There's something we can add is the Mongol rulers were interested in science as well. They were interested in geography, and they wanted to know about peoples, territories, their lands, So they really wanted to have new maps. And we know that Mongol Khan ordered their different scientists from China, Central Asia, any scientists to contribute to a new map of their own world, the Mongol Empire, but also of the world. And this is a huge step forward in terms of modern perception of the world, because at that time, finally, we had maps that are almost modern maps of Eurasia. And this is new because before maps were very religious. Because the Christian, they wanted maps that were centers on Jerusalem. The Muslim maps that were centers on Mecca, for instance. Or there were all those ideas about monstrous populations living on Earth. People were scared about, what was beyond, like in Siberia. But with the Mongols, because there were people who could say, well, we are traveling everywhere. We know there are no those monsters, they don't exist. And we can trade, and we can communicate. And so the perception of the world itself changed during the Mongol period, thanks to also this, Mongol strong will of, creating communication. Also, if it's for their order and their power, clearly, but still, this is super important because 16th century, that we call modern age, would never develop the way it developed without the Mongols. Because we already know that Christopher Columbus would have never dreamed of his trip without Marco Polo, without all those previous travelers who benefited from, this great Pax Mongolica.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And we wish success in all your future scientific discoveries on untrodden paths of Mongol history. On behalf of our viewers of Untold History of Mongolia, we would like to thank Dr. Marie Favereau for a very interesting tour, not only in this hall of exhibits, but also through the history of Mongol Empire. Thank you very much, and we wish success in all your future academic works.
Thank you so much for your invitation. It was a great pleasure.
Okay, thank you very much for accepting our. And thank you for
Thank you very much.